Friends, I am often criticized for not talking about the downsides of Montenegro. Here's a letter I received. Dimitri, good afternoon. Right now we're reading various reviews and studying the issue from different perspectives. So as I understand it, they're not only watching my videos but also reading other sources. There are a number of reviews that make you stop and think and encourage you to look into the matter more carefully. Perhaps someday you will make a video responding to these claims about the other side of Montenegro, if there is one. I understand that some people tend to exaggerate and stir up fear, and a lot of things should be taken with a grain of salt. And then the person goes on to list things that, frankly, he just copied and sent to me from what he read on the internet. In other words, these are supposedly the main drawbacks of Montenegro. Naturalization. Montenegro is actually an example of a messed up immigration law. I have a video on my channel about how I got permanent residency in Montenegro. I can show my card to anyone who comes here, and those who live the required number of years by law can get citizenship if they want. I also have a video on my channel with a review from a woman who lived here for the legally required amount of time and she has citizenship. So I don't really see what's so messed up about the immigration law here. The second point is waiting for the country to join the EU. I doubt that the EU is waiting for a mafia-run state. If Serbia's accession to the EU is more of a political issue, Serbia adapts very quickly to EU requirements, then Montenegro is simply incompatible with the EU. Who knows if or when that will ever happen, if it happens at all. Well, first of all, Montenegro is no more of a mafia state than any other country in Eastern Europe. All of this is just prejudice. And secondly, in the EU, I'm absolutely convinced that if the country is accepted, I'm not going to make any predictions about when that will happen. It could happen earlier, say in 2023 or 2024, or it could happen later. I don't know, I'm not going to guess. Because, to be honest, it's not that crucial for me. Besides, there are a lot of countries in the EU right now. If you want to live in some EU country, well, go ahead, try to immigrate there, or say, extend your residence permit. There will be a certain challenge both with immigration and with extending it. I don't understand, honestly, why everyone is so eagerly awaiting Montenegro's entry into the EU. What will it actually give you? Yes, maybe citizenship will give you something, but you're not citizens. So for us, the later, well, for you at least, since I already have permanent residency, so it doesn't really matter to me. The later Montenegro joins the EU, the better, basically. So there's really no reason to rush into this. I don't understand why everyone is making such a fuss about whether Montenegro will join the EU, whether it won't, or when it will. When it joins, it joins. All that depends on you is what you can do to immigrate to Montenegro as quickly as possible. You don't need to wait 3, 4, or even 5 years for it to finally join the EU. Because the conditions for emigration, of course, can change drastically. That is, migration itself won't suddenly come to an end, but the cost of migration may increase. So the sooner you immigrate to Montenegro, roughly speaking, the less money you'll spend. So the third point, human rights, democracy, a favorable political climate is not at all about Montenegro. But as for democracy, we recently saw a change of power in Montenegro, and it was an absolutely democratic transition. There were elections, the ruling party lost. So I think the question of democracy is settled by that. As for human rights, fortunately, I don't see any problem. I have never seen or heard of anyone being discriminated against anywhere. The police in Montenegro are your friend, not your enemy. They're perfectly normal people. You can approach them, talk, discuss something, have a laugh, even say, yeah guys, I broke the rules, I admit it. Let me go pay the fine now. No problem at all. Right? So, what else is interesting here? Then it goes on to say that some protagonists of the article ended up in Montenegro in 2020, when things were relatively calm. I have no idea who they're talking about. And then there was COVID, quarantine, all that stuff. Some of the protest activists ended up going to jail. In short, I didn't really understand what this was all about. Next, let's read the fourth point. A low crime rate, that's not true either. Obviously, no one is really going to bother tourists, but if you plan to live there for a long time, then you'll need to integrate into the local community, make the right connections, and figure out who runs things there. Because you need to understand who needs what, how much, and when. What nonsense is this? If I talk about crime in Montenegro, maybe some citizen who came from some idealistic country where there is no crime at all. I don't know if such countries exist in Europe, but maybe there's something like that. Well, I don't know where Monaco or something else similarly tiny. Maybe for someone who came from one of the most prosperous countries in the world, it might seem that Montenegro has a high crime rate. But compared to Russia, and not only Russia, but also many other developed countries, there is simply no crime in Montenegro at all. And I worry, for example, that my child might get into an accident on a bicycle. As for someone possibly doing something to him somewhere, that thought doesn't even cross my mind. That's it. Well, that's just impossible. Right? Right. Montenegro is a country with a clearly pronounced clan system. That's another cliche, another Russian prejudice. But although Montenegrins may seem lazy and good-natured, they're actually very passionate and energetic people. It's true that most of the major Balkan upheavals have passed Montenegro by, but the likelihood of a coup there is quite high, and the entire fragile balance of interests could collapse in an instant. I'm not going to comment on that. I would like to hear some arguments from somewhere. Do people even get this idea that Montenegro is on the verge of a coup and that everything could fall apart here at any moment? Once I hear some actual arguments, then we can discuss it. For now, it's just empty talk. The social infrastructure and healthcare are a complete mess. Worse, well, maybe only in Bosnia, even then, I'm not sure. Honestly, I have no idea if they even have a single MRI machine there. You just have to hope that the climate there is generally better than in the Republic of Belarus. But as for MRI machines, there's not just one, they actually have quite a few. I had an MRI in Montenegro, and this is roughly how it goes. You go to the health center, to the clinic, and say that you need to get an MRI done. They give you a referral to a doctor. You go to that doctor, and they schedule you for a specific time to come in for the MRI. They tell you, you need to do this, there's a certain preparation procedure, you need to do this, and that, for example, get an ultrasound beforehand. There's an available slot in a week. You say, yes, no problem, I'll come. A week later, you come and get the MRI done. Could you please tell me how long it takes to get an MRI? I want to emphasize the word free, not in any private clinics, but for free. How long does it take to get an MRI done for free in our home country? There's your answer to the question about the state of healthcare. Overall, I don't want to say that everything here is absolutely perfect when it comes to medicine. Yes, there are certain problems. If you compare to healthcare in Israel, then everything here is bad. But I think that most of those watching my video are not planning to live in Israel. If you compare healthcare in Montenegro to healthcare back home, then healthcare in Montenegro is at least not worse, and I actually think it's better than back home. As for social infrastructure, I'm not sure what is meant by social infrastructure. If we're talking about benefits, I agree, the benefits are low. They could be higher, but at the very least, until you get permanent residency, you pretty much won't be eligible for any benefits. So basically, because of that, there's no need to worry about it right now. So now the economy, despite having access to the sea, Montenegro's economy is in really bad shape. Given the current situation, there's no reason to expect that Montenegro will get out of it anytime soon. Sorry, but what's wrong with the economy? Just compare the investments coming into Montenegro with the investments coming into your home country. It doesn't matter which country you live in, Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, or Turkmenistan. Just compare the volume of investments in Montenegro with the investment volumes in your own country. And you'll immediately see what kind of economy each country has and how foreigners view that economy. And not just ordinary foreigners, not those who write reviews on the internet, but foreigners with money who analyze where to invest their funds. Now, the Balkans is a very unique region culturally. You can only really live there if you truly accept and understand it. And of course, you shouldn't forget that the civil war in the Balkans lasted for almost 10 years. Well, basically, that's probably exactly why Montenegro joined NATO, because they got tired of something destroying their country every 30 or 40 years, whether it's a civil war, a neighbor invading, or a world war. They joined NATO, and that guarantees that for probably the next 200 or 300 years there won't be any more wars in the country. In terms of peace and quiet, the calmest country of the former Yugoslavia is Slovenia. I won't argue, life in Slovenia is significantly better than in Montenegro. Why? Because the country hardly fought at all. So those who broke away earlier, those who fought less, lived better. Slovenia is in first place. There, they fought for literally just a few days, broke away from Yugoslavia, and after that lived peacefully, continued to live peacefully, and developed. In second place is Croatia. Well, those who fought longer, in principle, still haven't fully recovered, even though they have recovered. They still live worse than the Slovenians. Yes, I agree. Slovenia is the most developed country of the former Yugoslavia. I have a family among my clients. They are planning to emigrate to Slovenia, or rather, how they are going to. They came here a year ago and have already been living in Slovenia for a year. The family consists of a husband, wife, and 3 children. It is very difficult to immigrate to Slovenia with the whole family at once. First, the husband went. A few months later, the eldest son went. And now, a year has passed, and so basically, they gradually moved there from Montenegro. A year later, the middle son went. But the wife and the youngest son are still living here, so they are waiting until the necessary conditions are in place there so that they can move to Slovenia. I mean, maybe this works for some people. Maybe some people like it. Personally, I think I'd rather live in Montenegro than emigrate to Slovenia. Plus, not everyone is allowed in there anyway. There, unlike in Montenegro, there are already certain requirements for immigrants. In the past 10 years, if I'm not mistaken, the law on foreigners in Slovenia has changed 3 times. And each time it became more complicated. When you apply for an extension, they ask questions about how useful you are to the not Montenegrin Slovenian economy. Do you really need to extend your residence permit? Or maybe you're not bringing any benefit at all. Maybe you should have your residence permit revoked and be sent back to your home country. So in short, it's all much more complicated. Plus, you can just Google the costs of maintaining a company in Slovenia and compare them to those in Montenegro. The difference will be astronomical. Then think about whether you can actually handle it or not. And also, take a look at the cost of living in Montenegro, Slovenia. Also, consider whether you can afford to pay 2 or 3 times more for living expenses than in Montenegro, or if your budget simply doesn't allow for that. In terms of the economy, infrastructure, development prospects, and at least some signs of a civilized state, Serbia and Croatia, well, Croatia is definitely more stable. But that's the result of a very specific policy. Yes, Croatia is better than Montenegro. I just talked about this. The earlier a country stopped fighting and dividing things with the Serbs, the more developed it is. But that's exactly why emigrating to Croatia now is almost impossible. Serbia compared to Montenegro. Well, I can't say I know Serbia quite well, unlike the author of this article. I've been there many times over the past 10 years. I can't say that Serbia is any different from Montenegro in terms of infrastructure or anything else. It's not any better, except perhaps Belgrade. And even that's questionable. And besides everything else, we shouldn't forbidden to forget that in Serbia, legalization through real estate works well, which by the way doesn't suit everyone for a number of reasons. But in Serbia, legalization through a company works very poorly. Accordingly, if in Montenegro anyone who wants to can legalize their status, in Serbia that's not the case. Not just anyone can do it. Far from it. So, but in Montenegro, North Macedonia or Macedonia, there's really not much to do. It's strange that this is being written by someone who lives here. You know, this is a kind of Russian pastime, no matter which country you live in, whether it's Montenegro, the USA, Germany, sitting around and criticizing these countries, but at the same time continuing to live in them and not returning to your homeland. All right, then, let's keep reading. Well, for those who are looking for an easy way into the EU, it's better to consider Romania. Turns out, somewhere behind Australia, your great-grandparents might be Romanian. But what does better to get in mean? If you have Romanian roots, you can get a residence permit, not a residence permit actually, Romanian citizenship. And if you don't have Romanian roots and you want to somehow cobble them together, forge them or something, sooner or later it will end badly. Most likely it will turn out just like in Hungary, when people also got into Hungary by buying themselves some roots. And then all these new Hungarians had their passports taken away. In other words, deception can be detected and it will be checked. So in Hungary, they've checked. I'm absolutely sure that Romania is next. All these new Romanians with fake roots will be sent back to their homeland. That's right. But the Balkans and peace are incompatible concepts. I don't know why someone would feel uneasy here. Compared to the homeland, life here is much calmer. There is no stress. Well, compared to what we are used to, there is absolutely no stress here. Back there are tons of frozen conflicts that could flare up at any moment. In a NATO country, there won't be any conflicts, at least as long as NATO exists, and I think that, well, it will exist for at least another 200 or 300 years. A very high level of crime and corruption. There is no crime at all. That's all a lie. Compared to Russia, there's absolutely no corruption. Compared to Switzerland, yes, there is some, but you personally will never be affected by corruption. The Balkan organized crime is among the most developed in the world. For Montenegro, it is one of the key transit points for the trade of weapons, people, and drugs. Do you know what kind of crime I'm afraid of? There are some regions in the world where, for example, you could be taken away and then spend the next 20 years until you die working at some underground brick factory, carrying bricks. That's the kind of crime that's dangerous. What kind of crime is there in Montenegro? In Montenegro, it's true. There is trafficking passing through, drug trafficking. Well, I don't even know which countries it goes to. I'm not interested in that. So basically, Montenegro is just a transit country. That is, something comes from one country, gets transported through Montenegro, and is sent on to the next country. Honestly, it doesn't make any difference to me. I guess that's a bad thing, but honestly, I just don't care whether there's transit drug trafficking here or not. And then someone gets all worked up about it. Oh, wait. No, no, no. Let me find it. Ah, no, turns out that's all. I mean, I thought they were going to write more, like how dangerous it is to live here, that there are shootings in the streets. Yeah, sometimes it happens, like, I don't know, once every 3 or 4 years, some criminal boss gets whacked somewhere. Again, I guess that's a bad thing. But it's criminals. Some criminals took out another criminal. Honestly, I'm not going to worry about that. I know that ordinary people here aren't being shot, beaten, or killed. That suits me just fine. And as for some mobster getting shot somewhere once every 3 years, well, just don't become a mobster. When you chose that life, you knew that's how it could end. So basically, I'll be able to sleep soundly because of that. Now, about Montenegro's de facto permanent leader, Dukanovic. Just to remind you, he is currently the president. But in Montenegro, the president has almost no real power. All the power lies with the government, the prime minister, and the Senate. That's how it is. And Dukanovic's party suffered a crushing defeat in the parliamentary elections. So I don't really know why he's so worried. So, yeah. And the last thing this person writes, you can only really live there for a long time if you're really into Balkan culture. And of course, the climate there is pretty decent. Well, I don't about the climate. The phrase pretty decent is also unclear, since there's no climate like that anywhere in Russia. Even if you compare it to Sochi or Crimea, the climate here is better. But it's not even worth comparing it to the rest of Russia. And again, you can only really live there for a long time if you're really into Balkan culture. But honestly, what's wrong with Balkan culture anyway? So, friends, those are the downsides of Montenegro. Some people write things like this, and others write similar things about the USA, Germany, Canada, Australia, about every country, really. Listen, this is nonsense. There's no other way to put either. Don't listen. It's up to you.